Oh, we on? Okay. Welcome to the show, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. So we had a wild morning this morning. Rob and I were down in Surfside looking at some of our assets and some of the folks in our mastermind. So we offer our Airbnb management service to the folks in our mastermind. So whenever Rob and I are near any of those assets, we kind of like to poke our head in and do a little QA QC check. You know, what's the place look like? Is the Wi-Fi code there? Is the book? We have a book. Whenever you check in, you got all the stuff in the book. Plenty of towels, all that stuff. Plus, we want to kind of rate the maids and see how everything's going. Anyway, we went down, did our little checks, and then Catherine, Rob's wife, bought a house on the bay side, and it's got 2 boat slips. And so the rehab on that was finished a couple of weeks ago, and Rob has been diligently building furniture. So we do not have a furniture builder here in our construction company, so we went there to finish up some furniture builds. And while I was downstairs, we heard what we thought was thunder. Like it kind of rumbled for a while. And I said, hey, it's probably time to get out of here because these coastal storms that kick up in what seemed like in the middle of nowhere, like in 2 seconds, can be pretty rowdy. So it's like, all right, let's get in the Jeep and get out of here. Well, we looked over at the LNG side of Freeport, and we could tell there was an explosion. So hopefully everybody's okay, but we heard it and then promptly got off the island. But it looks like they had a small explosion over at the LNG. I guess that's where they fill up the big tankers. If you're ever down there in Surfside, you see the really big ships. I mean, the really big ones. And they have what looks like these domes in them. Those are the LNG carrier ships. So, and I'm totally butchering all this terminology. I'm sure somebody's getting on. We're going to have a oil and gas LNG expert's going to say, no, it's called this, and this is what they look like. And all. But anyways, it's the really big ones. So they had a small explosion out there. We're leaving the island, and literally like ambulances and fire trucks are all on their way. So hopefully everybody's okay over there. But it was a little wild. We've been down there a lot over the last couple of years, and kind of never witnessed anything like that. So the funnest thing is when they're flaring, and sometimes they do it at night. So at one of our beach houses, we used to sit on the roof of all things, like a bunch of teenage kids, and watch the flaring. It's like redneck fun. We'd see the beach on one side in the ocean, and it looks cool, and you could see all the ships coming in and out of the intercoastal waterway. And then you can watch so you get to see that industrial traffic and, the beautiful ocean, all that. And then on the other side, you get to see the sunset and the plants flaring. It's kind of, I think it's kind of cool, actually. And then at night, all the plants have all the lights on them and stuff. So anyway, it's, I've always liked the more industrial stuff instead of just being completely out in kind of beach town nature, if you will. So anyway, it's one of the interesting things that you've got to deal with from time to time when you are working in some of these more industrialized areas. So in any case, the explosion was so big that it's actually caused some changes in the stock market. Let me see here. This came out on Zero Hedge, like right after the explosion. U.S. nat gas plunges on reports of explosion at Texas LNG export terminal. So it's actually at the terminal. What did they say here? Explosion. You can see it really didn't look that bad. Nat gas contracts slumped as much as 12% on the news to $8.43. So pretty wild. It tells you how important the area of Freeport and Surfside are. Freeport is third on the coast. It's right behind Corpus Christi, and then of course the port of Houston is much larger. It's largest, I believe it's the largest port in the country, if not top 3 in the world or something. You want to pull that one up? But it is gigantic. So when you look at the expansion that's going on in Corpus Christi right now, they're building that huge bridge, a gigantic bridge to replace the old one because they want to bring in larger ships. So Houston, Corpus Christi, and Freeport, aka Surfside, are some of the most important shipping channels that we have in the United States, not just in Texas, but in the United States. So for us, when we started to make the play down to Surfside and Freeport, we looked at it this way. This is a vacation spot, but it's also a really important industrial sector. So what's the stats there, Clayton?
Houston's number 8 largest port in the U.S.
Okay, eighth in the U.S.
By foreign waterborne tonnage, it's the busiest in America.
All right, so it's the busiest port in America. So a lot of people. The port of L.A. is gigantic. Is that number one? Okay, Port of L.A. is huge, and they are having problems getting loading and unloading. There's just so much stuff that's going on. But Houston is obviously a very important shipping channel. So is Freeport, and then of course so is Corpus. I might have an economist come on, or somebody who's a specialist in industrial waterborne transportation, and kind of explain how important some of these areas are in the United States. So, in any case, when people said, "Jason, why are you down in Freeport? What are you doing in Corpus Christi?" I'm like, "Where do you think all this stuff comes from? The stuff comes from somewhere. You know, they're not shipping it down I-10. You know, you put it in these ships because it's a lot less expensive to do it, and it's coming from places that don't have any land. So, in any case, it makes a lot of sense from a shipping standpoint. But in any case, pretty fun morning so far. All right, so a couple of folks asked me about online about inflation and the marketplace, and this reminds me so much of COVID. When COVID first hit in March, I was already studying what was going to happen February 2nd. In fact, if you go to I believe it's on Instagram, and it may be on my old Twitter account, February 2nd, 2020, I was looking at some data, and I shared it online, and I said, guys, I don't know what this thing is, but I'll tell you what, it's something that's going to have an impact. I didn't know it would be this big, but this will have some sort of financial impact. I'm talking about COVID. I didn't realize it would be this big, but the Chinese typically don't weld people in their apartments for no good reason. In fact, Shanghai was shut down for over a month recently. So the reality is that some of these things, whether you agree with these things or not, it doesn't really matter. They're going to have a huge financial impact. And I'm feeling it again. I'm getting that spidey sense. I'm getting that feeling in my gut, and then I go looking for the data. Now, people would call that confirmation bias. That's not true. I'm feeling something, and it's this recession that's coming up. Like, we're in a recession. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any other way to put it. But we're in a recession. We're just waiting for the data at this point to say we're in a recession. So we're going to be in a recession. So a lot of people are getting really nervous. And I was excoriated online. And yes, I know you guys watch the show. My haters are my best audience. Did you guys know that? Those people watch every single episode. It's funny, there's this group of people I have this argument with for every 18 months. It's like I can set my watch to it at this point. Where it's like every 18 months, they come out saying, no, Jason, you've said X, Y, and Z. This isn't, and I'm like, wait a minute, we've had this argument already? Now you're saying there's a real estate crash. Well, what happened to your prediction 18, 36, 48 months ago? What happened to those predictions? Oh, but now you're right. Oh, now you're right. Yeah, it's that old broke watch is right twice a day. It's like, okay, so now you're right. So now I'm going to explain here in a little bit why they're not right. But more importantly, I'm doing a weekly market update on Zoom. If you guys want to be a part of that, go to Mr. Texas Real Estate, MRTXRE/events. If you go to our event calendar, you can sign up for the Zoom there. It's on Monday mornings at 11 a.m. Central. So sign up there, and it's recorded, so it goes on Facebook, YouTube, all that other stuff. But if you want to see it live and you want to ask questions in real time, that's the place to go. So when we get back from break, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's going on in the economy. This is Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Welcome back, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. In the history of never, this is really important. In the history of never, have real estate prices correlated with interest rates. Now, if you're hearing this for the first time, that sounds preposterous. But here's what I'll tell you, it's absolutely true. In the history of never, meaning it has never happened, we have no documentation, we have no statistical analysis, serious statistical analysis, that says that interest rates and house prices are correlated. None. We have 200 years of real estate data, and at least the last 60, 70, well, probably closer to 50, with regards to interest rates. When interest rates skyrocketed in the 70s and 80s to fight inflation, guess what happened to house prices? They went up by a lot. So I really don't understand why allegedly smart people who report on this stuff keep saying stuff like, well, as interest rates go up, house prices go down. No, they don't. That's absolutely not true. In the history of never has that been the case. In fact, interest rates are completely irrelevant to real estate. They have nothing to do with real estate. Home buyers are payment buyers. The interest rate could be 20,000%. As long as they can afford that payment, they're buying the house. You know, we're having a lot of discussions right now, or at least, well, I should say we. The GSEs are having a lot of discussions right now on working out the rest of forbearances through a 40-year mortgage. It's a really interesting conversation. You get into the really nerdy stuff in mortgage. This is why I don't believe there's ever going to be another crash like 08 and 09. Because the GSEs are bending over backwards to make sure they never have to take a house back. Like they're like, hey, why don't we just do whatever the unpaid balance is, whatever the late fees are and all that other stuff, it is way cheaper to put that on the back of a 40-year mortgage than it is to actually go in and foreclose. I personally believe this. We are not going to see foreclosure activity like we ever have. I think you've got to understand a couple of things. The GSEs are backed by the federal government. There's an insurance program that props up real estate. And as these properties go into foreclosure and losses begin to occur, it erodes the financial quality of that insurance program, even though it's government backed. We also know that as foreclosures rise, these properties typically do not come close to their market value. Now, I will tell you this. Less than 2% of mortgages in the United States are considered underwater. Less than 2%. So even if a house goes into foreclosure, the homeowner is going to be able to get out of it. Now, the reason that's been the case is because we've had massive appreciation. And heck, a lot of people took out 15-year mortgages because their payments didn't change. So one of the arguments that I've made for a while now is, where do you see the data that says interest rates and house prices are correlated? Because if you look at the last 50 years of data, interest rates go up, house prices go up, interest rates go down, house prices go up, interest rates stay the same, house prices go up. So I'm like, where's the correlation? I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. In the history of never. Now, you'll find some dopey articles out there that say, well, as interest rates rise, house prices go down. When? Interest rates went through the roof in the 70s and 80s. House prices kept going up. Why? That's where things get interesting. When you start looking at population, when you start looking at household formation, now the data starts to make sense. As more people form households, get married, live together, have kids, then the demand for real estate, single-family real estate, increases. That drives prices. That is absolutely what's happening right now. There's a whole lot of millennials that are not sleeping on friends' apartments' couches anymore. They're having kids, or they're fur babies. If you guys have heard that one, the fur babies, meaning they got dogs and cats and all that other stuff. And now they're buying houses. They want to buy a house. They don't want to throw their money away on rent. I think you're going to see a real downturn in real estate maybe 20 years from now. That actually has to do with a shrinking population. But that's a show for another day. You're going to see a lot of asset classes just implode in the next 20 years simply because we don't have any people left. All population in all modern economies is shrinking. And that shrinking is not good for the economy. However, today, we've got a huge class of millennials, and they are buying houses. One of the reasons we had that big crash in 07 and 08 was because there were a lot of bankruptcies preceding the crash. That would have been 04 and 05. But also Gen X's, the Gen Xers, I would be a part of that generation. Gen X is a really small generation. And the household formation rates were really low. I bought my first house in 04. But a lot of younger Gen Xers, they just weren't around in 07 and 08. There was no demand for housing. Part of it was just population. It's demographics. They just didn't support all these new houses being built. Then we had this massive oversupply of houses. If you guys remember, if you go back to 07 and 08, the term was overhoused. The nation was overhoused. We had more houses than people. And we had a recession. So we've got a recession, more houses than people, household formation at, I want to say, an all-time national low. Like it had never been that low before. And personal financial issues, where there were a lot of bankruptcies. What ended up happening? Real estate market was impacted. But now what we're experiencing is something completely different. We need 1 million houses to go into foreclosure today to get back to the inventory of 2019. 1 million homes. There's only like 500,000 homes available to buy in the United States right now. We need like 1.5, 1.6, 1.8 million homes. And I can tell you, because I lived through those markets, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, they were hot markets. This one is like ultra white hot. This one's dangerous, is really what it comes down to. We're in a very dangerous marketplace. It's tough. I would hate to be someone who's got to buy and sell their personal house right now, because you got to sell it and then you got to find the next house, which is in this market, it's got to be crazy. We get back from the break. We're going to talk more about the economy and what's going on in housing. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Welcome back. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Talking about the economy. We are absolutely in a recession. Big time. Big time. What is that going to do to housing? Not much, if anything. In fact, the recession is going to impact certain families differently. I was actually at Papacitos today, and I noticed they finally put all of the tables in the restaurant, and the service was pretty decent. Historically, I've gone over there, and they've taken out half the tables. This was part of the COVID thing. But once we opened back up in Texas, I didn't notice all the tables were back. I didn't really notice it till today. I'm like, wait a second, this place is full. We had a late lunch. I got there at, 1:30. And the place was packed. After this, I'm doing an investor happy hour over at Poor Behavior. And my guess is it'll start to get kind of full around 6, 7 o'clock. I mean, if you guys notice that, the restaurants are pretty full. It's pretty busy out there. Well, that's weird. Aren't we headed into a recession? Yeah, some people are we're absolutely headed into a recession, but recession affects states and cities differently. Houston is actually what's considered a counter-cyclical market, meaning when we're in a recession, the United States is in a recession, Houston does even better. In fact, so does Texas. Why? Part of it has to do with the commodities market. So oil is going through the roof. I mean, I don't even know what we're at today. If we hit let me see here. I've got, I'm looking at housing stuff. Let's take a look at what's old light sweet crude at. Let's take a look today. What's the West Texas intermediary? Oh, we're at $123 a barrel, up 3% today alone. I want to say my prediction. So I just agreed to do the Noble Mortgage Market 6-month mid-year market update, which will be July 15th, I believe. And I'm going to go back and watch the one that we did at the beginning of the year. And one of my predictions was, hey, what do you think? Where do you think oil is going to be by the end of the year? And I said at least 125. And I said, I'm about 50% sure we're going to be at 150 by the end of the year. So oil is good for Houston. We also have this little industry called healthcare. We got the largest medical center in the world is here in Houston. I mean, if you got cancer, you're only going one of two places. You're going to Sloan or going to MD Anderson. It's that simple. Like there's really no choice, right? I mean, especially if it's one of these crazy, weird, rare cancers. Those are probably the two places you're going. So the reality is that this is an economy that thrives when the rest of the nation is suffering. So you're going to have to keep that in mind when you start reading some of these reports. The world's ending. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? This is Houston. The restaurants have never been fuller. Well, wait a minute, isn't retail down? Yeah, retail's down, but not here. You know what's funny? Rob, when he first came to this country of Texas, he was driving through some part, maybe it was Katy, somewhere. And he goes, you know how I know how much disposable income this state has? Is when I go through your suburbs and you have all these bounce houses. And I'm like, what's a bounce house? You know, like trampoline parks. Like they're everywhere. You've got enough disposable income in the state that you're paying to go inside a place to jump on a trampoline. He's like, these trampoline parks are everywhere. I just assume it was like that all over the country. It definitely is not. You know, count the number of paper plates on cars in parking lots. Oh, speaking of paper plates, looks like the guys that allegedly, I shouldn't say allegedly because I caught them in the act, were cutting on my catalytic converter on my Tundra. They got arrested. So, score one for the good guys. It was kind of crazy when you think about it. I thought, they'll never catch those guys. You know, when they initially took my police report, said, hey, do you want to press charges? I'm like, sure, but you really think you're going to catch them? And they're like, well, we'll see. Sure enough, in less than a week, they caught him. So funny story. I'm going into the restaurant where the incident took place. As I'm walking in, the manager comes out and greets us. Hey, man, what's going on? Hey, you know, we turned this over to the police. We've been talking to him back and forth. I said, great. And I said, well, it sounds like they caught him. They're like, that's good. And I said, I actually had the Lambo this weekend. So I said, well, I didn't bring my truck here. I brought a car that's even lower, so they couldn't get underneath it. And everybody was laughing. They're like, yeah, we heard you pull in. The thing is ridiculously loud. It's almost kind of embarrassing to drive, to be honest with you. I've had the Lamborghini now for a couple of weekends, and it's almost just a little too, even for me, it's almost just a little too much. But all the kids love it, and that's kind of fun. Much more of a Porsche guy. I told this story a couple weeks ago. I was over at North, I believe it's North Porsche Houston, but it's the Indigo Group right there at 45 and Beltway on the north side of town. And I just remember walking in there. I'm like, where are they giving these things away? Like there must have been 50 guys in there just talking, looking at cars. They were bringing around. Guys were taking test drives. I'm like, where where do all these guys come from? I mean, the cheapest car in the showroom's $330,000. Beautiful facility, by the way. If you get a chance to go, you've got to go. They have a glass wall that looks into their service bay, and that service bay where they work on the cars is probably cleaner than your house. I mean, it's ridiculous how, it's how those Germans are, man. They don't mess around, especially Porsche. Porsche doesn't do anything that it can't absolutely dominate in. So I'm walking in there, I'm like, what are all these people doing? By the way, in the middle of a recession, $330,000 cars. They had 2 Carrera GTs there. Depending on who you ask, $1.5 to $2 million for a car. They've got an R4.0 RS on the second floor. They had a really cool GT2 RS. I didn't see it there. It was purple, and it had that plaid stitching, which looks so good on a Porsche. I might do that on mine. Like a plaid black and red stitching on the inside of the seat. Looks ridiculous. It's like a total throwback thing, and it looks so good. But I'm standing there, and I know we're in the middle of recession. And anybody that thinks they're smart on Facebook right now is running around saying, market's changing, it's going to be a crash. You guys better get ready. Oh, the world is ending. And I'm like, there's guys fighting over $330,000 cars at my local Porsche dealership. So let me tell you something right now. There's going to be 2 recessions. There's going to be recessions where it's like, yeah, my business isn't doing as well as it should be, but, we're doing pretty good. And, my stock portfolio took a 25% hit, but, we're still doing good. Decided to go ahead and buy that Porsche anyway. And then there's going to be the other side of the recession where it's just not great and people are losing their jobs. Now, here's the question. And I actually looked the data up. Here's the question. What is the impact on housing? 75% of loans since the Great Recession were from borrowers who had a 720 credit score or greater. I'm going to say that again. 75% of borrowers have a 720 credit score or greater. Let me tell you what the default risk of someone who has a 720 credit score. It's less than 0.3%. 720 credit score or greater, the chance of default, that's what it's called, the chance of default going into foreclosure is 0.3%. Where are all of the foreclosures going to come? There will be foreclosures. It ain't going to be like 08 and 09. When we get back from a break, I'm going to tell you exactly where those foreclosures are going to come from. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Was that 2 or 3? That was 3. Okay, so we're going to the last one. I need like a ticker tape or something.
Yeah. We gotta get that show clock hung up.
Oh, we do. One of these days, we're going to have like real cameras and like a real show clock. And one day, when I'm not out buying more buildings. Boy, Rob was like really cheery when I was like, hey, man, need another 4.1 million. And he's like, what are we doing? I'm like, buying another office building. Anyway. All right. Welcome back, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. There's going to be foreclosures. There are absolutely going to be foreclosures. Where are they going to come from? Well, here's the problem. 75% of loans were folks that have a 720 credit score or higher. Their default rate is less than 0.3%. Let's say it this way. There's a probability of default. Like, it's probable or it's possible, but it's not probable. Meaning, there's a 0.3% chance that they will end up in foreclosure. But let me say it another way. There's a 99.7% chance that they do not lose their home. I want to make sure everyone understands what that means. There is a 99.7% chance that 75% of loans since 2009 will never go into default. 99.7%. Now, if I'm a betting man, I can bet on the 0.3% or I can bet on the 99.7%. So here's your choice. I'm going to put it in real numbers. If I buy a foreclosure, I'll probably make, let's call it $50,000. I'll get it at a $50,000. Let's say it's a $100,000 house and I get it, or it's a $150,000 house, I get it for $100,000. There is a 0.3% chance that can happen. But there's a 99.7% chance that I can buy a house that's going to appreciate $50,000 a year. Because that's what's happening right now. Which one are you going to choose? The number's about the same. Am I going to bet on the future of foreclosures? 0.3% chance? Or am I going to bet on the 99.7% chance of future appreciation? Here's the problem with all of the people online and on major news networks and all that. No one talks about numbers because it requires work. But no one asks for the numbers because they got some nonsense to sell you. Let's sell you the fear. Oh my God, did you see what happened on Fox News? Or CNBC or CNN or whoever is out there? Did you see? Oh my God, everyone's getting all frothed up. Jason, interest rates are going up. Housing's about to crash. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Here, read this article, read this. There's a tweet here. There's a YouTube video you got to see here. Yeah, they're selling. They are buying your attention. Or they have a course to sell. Oh, I've got this real estate class for the coming foreclosure crisis. That has a 0.3% chance of happening. Now, here's the interesting thing. 75% of loans were given to people who have a 720 credit score or greater. 75%. You know what's also interesting? That's of the folks, homeowners that got loans. You know, 30% of the market right now are cash buyers. 30%. So 30% of the market are cash buyers. They're not losing their house in a downturn. Sorry, not going to happen. Then you have 70% of the market who are buying with loans. And of those 70%, 75% of them have a default risk of less than 0.3%. So now everybody goes, okay, Jason, well, that means if you don't have a 720 credit score, which is 75% of the market, that means 25% of the market's going to go into foreclosure. Well, hold on there. Let's say that's true. By the way, we're over 1 million houses short to not even get to a normal market, just like a regular seller's market. But hold on a second here. Less than 2% of mortgages are underwater. So if these homeowners have to sell, they're not giving them back to the bank. They're not doing short sales. They're just going to put them on the market and sell them in a week. And guess what? You're going to pay full price for it. Why? Because the market is paying full price for them. 2008, 2009 will never happen again. Everybody keeps crying over the boyfriend or girlfriend that left them. And I'm like, she ain't coming back, bro. Like, that's what this sounds like. Man, do you remember back in the day, I was buying properties in A-Leaf for 25 grand a door? Yeah, that was high school, bro. That's not coming back. No matter how much you want it to, it's not coming back. You know, back in the day, I used to be a captain of the football team or the head cheerleader. And now you work in a soul-crushing corporate job. Now, you can dream about those glory days, but they ain't coming back. And that's okay. But just recognize that what you're holding on to at this point is a fantasy. That's how I look at people when they tell me, without any data, Jason, the world is ending. Where do you get your data from? No, you don't understand. I saw the last crash. Okay, where's your data? Well, houses are really expensive. As compared to what? Houses are expensive? Yeah, they've never been higher. Well, let's start looking at some data. You guys can go to the Federal Reserve database that's run out of St. Louis. It's the St. Louis Federal Reserve that runs it. It's called the FRED database. There's a great metric. It's called mortgage debt service as a percentage of disposable income. It's called mortgage debt service as a percentage of disposable income. It has never been lower, meaning houses have never been more affordable. I hear this all the time. Jason, the affordability index. What does that mean? Well, it means the median income earner in this market can only afford this type of house. That means they can't even afford the median home in the marketplace. So therefore, it's not affordable. I'm like, here's the problem with that math. In real estate, only 3% of the market is ever for sale. So who cares about the median income in a marketplace? Because 97% of them are not buyers. You're looking at a median statistic, meaning the middle number, when real estate is done on what's called the margin, meaning the far right side, meaning the 3%. This is where people say, this is how you lie with statistics. Now, I don't think they're doing it intentionally. I don't think these people are nefarious. I just don't think they understand math, and that's okay. Now, let's talk about the houses that are going into foreclosure. Those are going to be your credit scores below 720. And what do those borrowers look like? Some investors, some private loans, and owner financing. You've got to think, if you've got a 720 credit score or lower, you are a lot riskier as a borrower than someone who's a 720 or above. So folks who have no credit, 500, 600, 610, 620, those are the borrowers that are going to go into default. Now, here's what's interesting. Those borrowers have not been getting loans from the big banks. Where have they been getting loans from? Investors, owner finance, that sort of thing. Those are absolutely going into foreclosure. If they had a good credit score, they just go to a regular bank. But they don't. Why? Because a bank doesn't want that risk on their balance sheets. You can whine and complain about the banks all you want, but one thing they did a really good job of this time around is giving money to people who can pay them back. And we know credit score is a great indicator of future performance. So I would be real careful with a lot of this owner-occupied stuff that are from investors. I'm getting entire owner finance portfolios right now sent to me. Notes. These are notes. And I look at them and I'm like, what do the borrowers look like? Well, they got, a government ID and a pile of cash. And I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. But here's what I know. Those are the folks that are going to be going into foreclosure. There's not a lot of them. But those are the ones that are going to be circling the drain. Now, a lot of those folks below 720 don't own a home. They haven't been able to get a home. So they're your renters. So we're going to see a little churn in the rental market. But we got so many people moving here, it's not going to be that big a deal. Thanks for listening to the show. We got a short message after the break. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network.